1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we need a multi-year, adequately funded transportation authorization before it expires at the end of this month. Now, there's no question but gas prices are too high. But when the speculation subsides and the world oil price starts to decline, price at the pump won't go down proportionately because it'll be seized by the big oil companies as an opportunity to further pad their profits. That's when we need to implement a substantially but gradually funded federal gas tax. That's what we need to fund our nation's infrastructure that has deteriorated for the last 20 years while that gas tax has not been increased. That's what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, because the fact is the big oil companies have been taking us for a ride on a pothole-filled highway. It's time to get into an energy-efficient vehicle on the road to economic prosperity and energy independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, the gentlelady from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my Congress member colleague Ted Poe for giving a shout-out to the Ports Caucus, showing this country that we can work together on issues that matter to the people of America. But, Mr. Speaker, yesterday was Super Tuesday, but this year's campaign has been anything but super. Thanks to the Supreme Court's misguided decision in the Citizens United case, a handful of super PACs funded by billionaires and special interest groups have dominated this year's elections. But it doesn't have to be this way. 4 years ago, the Republican nominee for President, John McCain, was a leading voice in reforming how we pay for campaigns. In this body, Republican Chris Shays fought to clean up elections. That's why I've come to the floor today to ask my Republican friends to join with me and people like John McCain and Chris Shays in supporting the Disclose Act, a law that would shine a very bright light on these super PACs. This law would let us know who is paying for these ads and require these invisible power brokers to appear in their ads just like the candidates do. If we came together to change this, it really would be super.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the 3rd annual celebration of National Teach Ag Day on March 15th, a day designed to raise awareness and the need for more agriculture teachers, encourage people to consider a career as an agriculture teacher, and celebrate the positive contributions these teachers make in their schools and communities. Every day, agriculture teachers help students develop the skills necessary to become leaders and contributing members of society. These educators teach by doing, not just telling. And by sharing their passion with young people, they prepare students for successful careers, whether they choose to go into the field of agriculture or not. There are currently over 10,000 agriculture teachers serving almost 1 million students in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. But it is estimated that there will be hundreds of unfilled positions across the United States this year. National Teach Ag Day is a nationwide effort to bring attention to the need for more agriculture educators in the U.S. and raise awareness of the valuable role these teachers fill in our schools and communities.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk today about gas prices. I represent a poor, rural congressional district where, unlike in the big cities, you have to have an automobile to get around. And in the 10 years I've been in Congress, I have not had any issue that has upset my constituents more, including the wards, than the gas prices we had 3 years ago. And here we are back in the same situation with prices $105 for a barrel, $3.75 for a gallon of gas. And nothing's been done over the last 3 years by this administration to deal with this issue. And more recently, the Keystone Pipeline, which would have helped bring a lot more oil on the marketplace by bringing it down from Canada to our refineries on the coast, has been denied by the President. He needs to be doing some things to help us. You know, he says, well, people say drill, 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 that won't solve our problem. Well, the fact is it might have if he'd started 3 years ago when we had this last burst of high gas prices. He's right, it won't deal with the current problem, but this is going to continue to be a perpetual problem if he doesn't make some changes. He needs to authorize the drilling in the Outer Continental Shelf and ANWR and pass the Keystone Pipeline.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Hawaii rise?
Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Gas prices are rising, and we'll see an average, some predict, by $5 per gallon by summer. Some places we're already there. Mr. Speaker, voices are rising, asking us what are we doing to bring gas prices down. Mr. Speaker, we can agree. We must go beyond short-term fixes, and we must cure ourselves of this nation's petroleum addiction. Yes, it is an addiction. Our constituents are asking, what's causing it? What's causing these gas prices? We know when Iran threatens to close the Strait of Hormuz, prices soar. This is because 1/5 of the world's oil supply goes through those straits. Mr. Speaker, Americans' vision of our energy future must go beyond the next gas pump. We must look at the fundamentals of a new policy. Yes, diplomacy is part of that, but more importantly, it's us. We must join hands to self-sufficiency and truly be committed to renewable resources. The President proudly pointed out to Marines and the Navies in the State of the Union the 50% sustainability. Let's adopt that policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
To address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak on an international issue that merits our attention here in Congress. This month, hundreds of thousands of concerned citizens, 140,000 and counting, have signed a petition to the White House. The petition calls on the administration to stop expanding trade with Vietnam at the expense of human rights. I know it's hard to imagine for all of us here in this chamber, but in Vietnam, the mere act of composing songs can be sufficient grounds for the communist government to put someone in jail. In fact, that's exactly what happened to Viet Canh, a Vietnamese citizen who was arrested and is currently being detained for merely composing and singing 2 protest songs about his own country. This arrest and many others in recent years are issues that have to be at the forefront of our trade negotiations with the Vietnamese government. I urge my colleagues to join me in urging the President to put freedom and human rights first.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from the American Samoas rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, President Obama recently announced $30 million in new funding as part of his energy research strategy to reduce our reliance on foreign oil and provide Americans with new choices for vehicles that do not rely on gasoline. This crucial investment in advanced energy research will promote Americans' innovation to diversify our nation's energy resources and create new jobs. Under President Obama's leadership, America is now producing more oil than at any time in the last 8 years, and our dependence on foreign oil is at a 16-year low. Over the last 3 years, the Obama administration has approved dozens of new pipelines and opened millions of acres for oil and gas exploration. The Obama administration has also implemented the toughest fuel economy standards in history that will cut oil consumption by 12 billion barrels and save American families $1.7 trillion for the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, I commend President Obama for taking these important steps to promote and to enhance our nation's energy needs. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by direction on the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 572 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 117, House Resolution 572, resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill, H.R. 3606, to increase American job creation and economic growth by improving access to the public capital markets for emerging growth companies. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. In lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Financial Services, now printed in the bill, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of the Rules Committee print 112-17 shall be considered as adopted in the House and in the Committee of the Whole. The bill as amended shall be considered as the original bill for the purpose of further amendment under the 5-minute rule and shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. No further amendment to the bill as amended shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such further amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such further amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill as amended to the House with such further amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended, and any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion, except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of the debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman, my friend from Colorado, Mr. Polis. The 30 minutes, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
During consideration of this resolution, all time is yielded for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in support of this rule and obviously the underlying bill. House Resolution 572 provides a structured rule for H.R. 3606 that jumpstart our business startups, or what we also call the Jobs Act. The bill was introduced on December 8, 2011 by my friend, a bright young man who is one of the brand new leaders of our conference, a freshman, a gentleman from Tennessee, Stephen Fincher, and was ordered reported by Chairman Baucus and the Committee on Financial Services on February 16, 2012 by a near unanimous vote of 54-1. Members on both sides of the aisle have had an opportunity and will have opportunities to submit perfecting ideas. Thank goodness the Rules Committee allows this sort of thing to happen now that Republicans are in charge. The structured rule before us allows for 17 amendments, Mr. Speaker, 13 from Democrats, 3 from Republicans, 1 which is a bipartisan amendment, meaning that Republicans and Democrats, members of this House, have a chance to work together on legislation for jobs for our country. The Chairman of the Rules Committee, David Dreyer, has once again allowed the House to work its will through this important legislation by allowing us to have a rule not only where members of Congress can come and share their ideas with the Rules Committee, but once again have them made in order where they can come down on the floor, express their ideas, work with colleagues to perfect the legislation, and then to vote for the bill because they were a part of it. Those are ideas that I think are good for this body, and David Dreyer, as chairman of the committee, deeply believes this is the way the floor should operate. Today, we're going to consider a package of common sense, job-creating bills that stand out for a unique reason. And that unique reason is the President of the United States now supports what we're doing also. Unfortunately, Senate Democrats have yet to give their blessing on this bill and the package that's included, and so we're just going to have to do the best we can and then hope for the best. Maybe the Senate will decide they want to take action on bills that will better not only enable our country to have jobs and job creation, but a chance to work for the best interests of the American people. So, House Republicans are on the floor again today, as we have been doing now for a year and a few months, to persistently make the case about job creation. Why jobs are important to our country, why the Congress should be all about trying to work with the free enterprise system, work with members of Congress who see the big need for jobs not only at home but all across this country in every single state, so that we can have job creation as a major goal of what this Congress and hopefully the President would be for. Over 30 bills that we've already passed through this body over the last year and a couple of months await consideration by Senate Democrats. That means that this body, just like the bills we're going to handle today, we have been on the floor for a year talking about jobs, job creation, the way we can aid and abet the free enterprise system, investors, and opportunities back home. Those bills are waiting over in the Senate, and today we're simply going to add to that. The big difference is the President has now said, you guys got a good idea. The day the President agrees with House Republicans and House Democrats is a great day for our country. So the good news out of Washington today is Stephen Fincher had a good idea that the President agrees with, and we're going to do something about that. Our economy has a credit problem too, Mr. Speaker, not just a jobs problem. Companies are unable to receive the credit they need to grow their businesses. And as banks and other traditional credit providers face stricter federal restrictions by the Obama administration, it decreases the ability for lending to take place. And companies that need lending and cash and capital available to them are looking for innovative funding mechanisms that will provide the liquidity necessary so that they can keep their businesses current, so they can expand their business, so they can meet the needs of the marketplace. This administration continues to promote policies that slow economic growth and make it more difficult for businesses, in particular small businesses, to obtain capital and have a source of funding. So Republicans believe that we must create an environment that changes that encourages investment in small business, and small business, as we know, is really the engine of our economy and really the national job creators. The underlying bill does just that. The Jobs Act consists of numerous pro-growth provisions, and I'd like to talk about those because it's important for us to remind our colleagues that a pro-growth bill or a pro-growth environment that our free enterprise system would be involved in encourages not just the creation of capital, but also the ability of that formation of capital to make jobs in America to come about as a result of that. This bill from Congressman Fincher creates a new category of what is called emerging growth companies that will reduce costs for small companies to go public. Great idea. The legislation from our Majority Whip, Kevin McCarthy from California, that will allow small business to advertise for the purpose of soliciting capital from potential investors. In other words, this was not allowed by law. Small companies that have great ideas need the opportunity to advertise in the marketplace and have people see that there are good ideas. Kevin McCarthy is right. A bill from Congressman McHenry from North Carolina would allow what is called crowdfunding for initial public offerings under $1 million. In other words, it opens up the ability to gather more capital to come in. And Congressman McHenry is right. We need to utilize market-based solutions, and we need to make it legal. Two bills from Congressman Schweikert from Arizona, one that would allow more businesses to go public, gathering investment and growth, and a second bill which raises the threshold number of shareholders required for mandatory Securities and Exchange Commission registration for all companies. And finally, a bill by Congressman Quayle from Arizona also, which increases the threshold number of shareholders permitted to invest in community banks. In other words, bringing more investors to an important part of our economy, and that is called community banks. Banks that exist for the purpose of trying to make our communities, local communities, stronger and better. The banks and small business of the district which I represent, the 32nd Congressional District of Texas, which is primarily Dallas, Richardson, Addison, and Irving, Texas, consistently described to me about how they have an inability to raise capital investment, not due to a lack of willing investors, but as a result of burdensome regulations that are placed on them by the federal government. And oftentimes we discuss the need for the SEC limit on individual investors, and we know that it restricts their ability to raise funds through community participation in local business creation. I'm proud to tell them now that as a result of this bill today and the legislation included, help is on the way. These important changes not only provide businesses with the necessary ability to expand, but also they provide individuals with new mechanisms to invest and grow with their own personal assets in companies that they know best. The rules adjusted in the underlying bill have proven restrictive to economic growth. So we've got to adjust these problems in the marketplace and come up with new and creative ideas. We must push these constructive proposals without political delay, and this is why members of this body, including, I believe, the gentleman, Mr. Polis, support this bill. The reason why we can work together is to make sure that we push constructive ideas that are good for people back home. Mr. Speaker, our nation is still in crisis. We do not have enough jobs. We are in a dwindling marketplace because of the excessive number of rules and regulations that have been passed by prior Congresses. With employment persistently over 8%, we cannot continue the failed policies of government spending, rules and regulations, and the inability to pass laws that help job creation to overcome these problems. The underlying bill will do exactly that. It will help foster not only an environment but provide the underpinning through law that will allow the private sector to more fully participate. The future success of our economy rests in our hands of small private business, not the federal government. And what we're doing today is unleashing their potential so that they can focus on the things which they do best. This is part of having a Republican majority. Pro-business, pro-economic development for jobs, the formation of capital, and the ability for American entrepreneurship to flourish. The result is going to be an economic environment that promotes growth and generates more revenue for the federal government. I am delighted not only to be on the floor once again talking about economic growth, but once again trying to act as a soundpiece for the American people who are asking the United States Congress to please understand the plight that we are in, to please help work on what will help the free enterprise system's job creation. So today, as we are on the floor, we offer a hearty reminder to the American people that there are people who get what this is about. That's partially why this Republican majority has been and will continue to be successful. We will push for reform, a pro-growth environment, and the opportunity to help people back home, instead of with a handout, to give them the ability to do things on their own. I urge my colleagues to vote for this fair rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed without amendment H.R. 4105, an act to apply the countervailing duty provisions of the Tariff Act of 1930 to non-market economy countries and for other purposes.
Thank you. The Speaker recognizes the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
I rise in support of this bill, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who have worked long and hard on a number of these bills. In my remarks today, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good that these bills can do to free up our capital markets, but the bad and the ugly of issues that are more substantial to job creation and the fiscal integrity of our country, which this Congress continues to ignore. First, to respond to my colleague from Texas, who several times blamed one particular party in the Senate for advancing these bills, I would just like to remind my colleague that many of these bills are, in fact, sponsored by Democrats in the Senate. It's not Democrats or Republicans in the Senate. It is the Senate that needs to pass this. And as we know, the Senate requires 60 votes. So I would hope the gentleman from Texas will amend his future remarks to call upon the Senate to pass the Jobs Act rather than just the Democrats in the Senate, of course recognizing that Republican votes are needed to reach the necessary 60 votes to advance any legislation. I'll be happy to yield. Will the gentleman amend his remarks?
Remind the gentleman that the Republican Minority Leader, Mr. McConnell, has been asking for some 30 jobs bills to at least go through committee or to be on the floor, and I do not think that a jobs bill would be a problem for a Republican to object to. So I would once again advise the gentleman, I think my statement was correct. The Senate Minority Leader has asked for every single one of these 30 bills that have been passed by the House to be debated and voted on, and Republicans have pledged their support of all 30.
Well, and reclaiming my time, again, just as many of them are sponsored by Democrats as by Republicans, and it will take votes from both sides to get to 60 votes. I think they can do that. If however many members of, and many of these bills before the House have had over 400 votes, 90% of this body, hopefully they will command similarly large supermajorities in the Senate, comprised of both Democrats, many of whom sponsor these bills, and Republicans who may be opposed to certain elements, but hopefully in the name of moving the country forward will pass this Jobs Act. And here's what this bill will do. First of all, it's not a Jobs Act per se. The Jobs name is an acronym. It actually is called Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, or JOBSA, but I guess job sounds better. But what it really affects is capital markets. It's really a capital market bill. It's a good bill. It has several components that have already passed the House. My colleague from Texas outlined several of them. I want to explain why they're so important. First and foremost, it makes it easier for many small companies to go public. It rolls back some of the Sarbanes-Oxley regulations that were put in place in 2002 for small and medium cap companies. And again, when you're looking at the compliance costs of Sarbanes-Oxley, they don't scale with the business. So it's de minimis for a $10 billion business, but it's substantial and, in fact, a deterrent to accessing the capital markets for a $100 or a $300 million business. So this, in fact, rolls them back in a very thoughtful way. And I would further call for reexamination, of course, of the requirements for businesses of all sizes, but this will allow many small and mid-cap businesses to access the public capital markets. In addition, it allows people to invest in startups, a concept that's called crowdfunding, which is very exciting. Of course, heretofore, and essentially investing in startups has been restricted to what are called accredited investors. Now, an accredited investor is not just some investor that goes through some process of getting accredited. It's basically somebody who's wealthy. They have to be worth several $1 million, and then all of a sudden they're accredited. Now, we all know that some wealthy people are poor investors and some are good investors. One's wealth has nothing to do with how accredited or how good an investor one is, and families who are worth $100,000 or families that are worth $300,000 are perfectly within their rights under current law to go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City and bet their entire life savings on one roll of the dice, and yet they're not allowed under current law to invest in startups. So we, with this bill, would allow families of all means to invest in startup companies, some of which will work out and some of which will not. American families will enter this with being aware of the risks. But again, it is their money. They earned it. They pay taxes on it, and they should be able to invest it and or gamble it as they see fit. Another thing we do under this bill is increase the number of shareholders that is required for mandatory registration from the SEC from 500 to 1,000. This is very important because many companies use stock options, which is a good practice. It gets the employees to own part of the company, to own part of the fruits of their labor, to have some upside on the equity. But companies have effectively been limited on this because once they have 500 shareholders, they're forced to file as public. So we're allowing them to stay private longer as the need fits them and not have to scale back on their option policy with their employees. Inevitably, some of those options get exercised and employees become outright owners over time. This would prevent them from being forced into a backdoor IPO. In addition, we again allow community banks to raise additional capital. We remove some of the requirements around that. Community banks are important lenders in our community, and that's an important step as well towards allowing capital to flow more freely. So in sum, the several bills, most of which have already passed this House, that we are packaging in the Jumpstart or Act, this act that we're doing here today, are good bills that will free up the capital markets. And yes, in the medium and long term, there will likely be some jobs created, because where will the capital go? It'll flow to businesses that will encourage job growth. This is not something that happens overnight, but this is something that happens as a fruit of the investment. Some of these startups that are funded through crowdfunding might in fact be employers of 1,000 people in 5 years or 10 years. And that's what's so exciting about the potential of these mechanisms to create value in the economy. But what are we not doing, and what would be a real jobs bill? In my opinion, there's really several things that are holding back our private sector recovery. First and foremost is our budget deficit and the questions about the fiscal integrity of this country. This Congress continues to avoid taking action on a default scenario under which debt as a percentage of GDP would rise from about 70% where it is now to about 200% of our GDP by 2040. A far worse situation than many of the fiscally beleaguered nations in Europe that are undertaking bailouts. This is widely known on both sides of the aisle, and in fact, the solution is widely known as well. And there are several that have been presented. There's a bipartisan group that emerged from the Senate, including Democrats and Republicans, that proposed a plan to reduce the deficit as a percentage of GDP down to 1.9% by 2021. There's been a similar effort on behalf of the Bowles-Simpson Commission, again, to rein in fiscal spending so that debt as a percentage of GDP would be 35% instead of 200% by 2040. This Congress has not advanced either, and in fact, quite to the contrary, has passed an operational budget that only serves to continue these deficits through the next 10 years. Again, giving fiscal certainty around the integrity of our nation would do a lot more to free up capital and improve the flow of capital and credit markets and create jobs than these relatively minor but still important bills that we're considering here today. The other reform that would create a lot more jobs in this bill, and I think would better be called the Jobs Act if they can come up with a fancy acronym for it, is business tax reform. I'd like to submit to the record a recent report from the White House and Department of the Treasury on a framework for business tax reform. I ask unanimous consent to submit that to the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. The President has proposed eliminating loopholes and special interest tax deductions in our corporate tax code to lower the rate to 25% to 28% from 35%. American corporations are currently among the highest taxed in the world. Most of our peer countries tax their corporations in the 20% to 25% range, and capital can flow across borders. Operations of companies in a global economy can flow across borders. Why would a for-profit company with a fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders choose to domicile in an area where they have to pay a 35% tax rate when they can pay a 20 or 25% tax rate, and also exist in an environment that assures the surety of law? What the President's tax reform proposal will do, and many of us on both sides of the aisle have been calling for similar reforms over the last several years, is on, again, a revenue-neutral basis, remove many of the special interest tax considerations that were put there by lobbyists in our tax code, and bring down the overall rate to 25 to 28% so that companies can reinvest in their growth. It tends to be the more profitable companies, the companies that are therefore paying corporate tax, that are the highest growth companies. So it directly affects job creation to say that profitable American companies should be paying 25 to 28% instead of 35%, discouraging them from outsourcing jobs, discouraging them from domiciling overseas, and also discouraging the improper allocation of capital through special interest tax breaks in our tax code that give money arbitrarily to everybody from wooden arrow manufacturers to oil and gas industry simply because of some central planner in Washington determined that that's where capital should go. So again, if we really want a Jobs Act, let's solve the deficit. Let's reform our uncompetitive business tax code that, as the President has indicated. But yes, let's also move forward with these bills to free up capital flow for startups that will hopefully lead to the next great American companies. But by no means so somehow this Congress think that just because there's some letters that stand for the word jobs, that somehow the jobs issue is solved or addressed by allowing companies to stay private with 1,000 instead of 500 shareholders, allowing a few small and mid-cap companies on the margins to go public because of relaxed Sarbanes-Oxley requirements. Great things. Let's pass this bill. I'm confident it will pass overwhelmingly. Let's call upon the Senate to pass it. But let's not pretend that this is some kind of jobs bill for our country or that this is any way, shape, or form restores the fiscal integrity of our nation. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The chair would ask members not to traffic the well while members are under recognition. The gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I applaud the gentleman, my friend, Mr. Polis, for not only coming to our defense and aid in this, but also aiming for things that people all across this country need. It's called Action by Congress for Jobs. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 4 minutes to the young gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fincher.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues from Texas for yielding and keeping the main thing, jobs and the economy. I rise in support of this rule. As an original co-sponsor to H.R. 3606, the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, I rise in support. Since last year, the gentleman from Delaware and I, along with many members of the Financial Services Committee, have worked in a bipartisan manner to develop legislation that would enhance job creation and expand access to capital for America's job creators. Title I of this bill is legislation I introduced with Congressman Carney, the Reopening American Capital Markets to Emerging Growth Companies Act, which would help more small and mid-sized companies go public. During the last 15 years, fewer and fewer startup companies have pursued initial public offerings because of burdensome costs created by a series of one-size-fits-all laws and regulations. According to the testimony from the IPO Task Force Chair, Kate Mitchell, from 1990 to 1996, there were 1,272 U.S. venture-backed companies that went public on U.S. exchanges during that 6-year time frame. However, in 6 years from 2004 to 2010, there were just 324 offerings. Even the President's Jobs Council in his 2000 access to venture capital behind Israel, Hong Kong, Norway, and Singapore, among others. The bottom line is that fewer and fewer companies are choosing to go public, and those that do are not necessarily going public on the exchanges in the United States. H.R. 3606 would reduce the cost of going public for small and medium-sized companies by phasing in certain regulatory requirements. Reducing these burdensome regulations will help small companies raise capital, grow their business, and create private jobs for Americans. I have reviewed the amendments made in order by the Rules Committee to H.R. 3606, and I will be supporting some opposing others. Also, the gentleman from Delaware and I will be offering a manager's amendment which will make some technical improvements to the bill. I look forward to a lively debate